So the events of the week, both in and out of our community, forced me to ponder how we might better prepare ourselves to receive the inevitable jolts of movement forward and movement back, like the ratcheting rise of a roller coaster. Sometimes I think we delude ourselves. Sometimes I think I delude myself, drawn by this false hope that with each click, each effort, we are getting ourselves to a place where the output of energy needed to make things happen will be self-sustaining. That if we've done the hard work of preparing the way, we'll get to the crest at the top, and gravity will carry us forward into easy movement, and we will just be forced into such easy movement that we will laugh and we will smile and we will get into some kind of alluring amnesia that allows us to forget all of the energy that we expended to get us to the starting line. It's a ruse. You know this. I know this, but maybe you forget sometimes, like I do. Sometimes communities can feel like roller coasters, but roller coasters only work through the application of intense amounts of energy at regular and ongoing intervals. Truly sustainable community may allow for moments of coasting, taking a break, giving ourselves time away to breathe and renew and regroup. But these only work if we're staggering our efforts. The only thing that allows any one of us to take time to breathe or step back or rest in community, and please don't mistake my meaning here, these are necessary breaks we all deserve and we all must claim. But taking breaks and resting in a community is only possible if during any individual's time of rest, others are stepping forward into active work. There is a paradox that exists between the speed of modern life, which seems to demand of us this frantic, frenetic motion, and the reality that this speed is the very thing that prevents us from engaging in deep, authentic ways with the world and the communities in which we find ourselves, or the communities that we seek to take greater part in. Saying no to this demand for speed is terrifying because we know too much about the existential threats that we face. We look out at those threats and we often respond in one of two ways. Option one, let's roll up our sleeves, folks, we've got work to do. Option two, let's go back to bed, folks, because we'll never be able to change anything. I want to remind us of a third option, one that I believe offers something more sustainable. We must take time to connect, folks, to our own selves, to our own bodies and our own souls, and also to one another and to communities that sustain us. We must take time to cultivate the beauty of connections that will only blossom or set fruit if we move at the rate of Saunter. Slow and intentional, oriented toward welcome and learning about and from one another. And Lamott said, almost everything will work again if you unplug it a few minutes. Sometimes we act as though if we just move fast enough, if we find the direction we'd like to go and head that way with purpose and direction and intention, we'll get to where we need to be. But that is the antithesis of Muir's entreaty, that we move at the speed of Saunter when we are in or attempting to create holy spaces, Saunter. We must let ourselves go slowly, to stop along the way and engage in practices that allow us to make meaning along the paths that we are moving down together. Everything is holy when we let ourselves go slowly enough to take it in. So let us ponder some concepts that lead us into the Saunter, that move us toward la Saunter, to the holy ground. The television personality and lawyer fellow, he has a lot of different hats, Van Jones said, "It's in the convergence of spiritual people becoming active and active people becoming spiritual that the hope of humanity now rests." Spiritual people becoming active and active people becoming spiritual, that the hope of humanity now rests. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. You don't have a soul, you are a soul, and you have a body. Don't forget it. In other words, we have to push back against the inherited dualism that we get within Christian teachings that suggest that we are spiritual beings who are only temporary earthlings, and that results in people who orient their lives towards some distant future instead of the one we have right now, this holy ground upon which we walk, this way of moving slowly in that space. To do otherwise is to engage in oppressive practices and allow us to forget that we have these bodies that are living and loving and interconnected. If there is one thing that you probably have encountered whenever you talk about your spiritual life, it is this. Logical arguments don't bring people to any understanding of that. It doesn't cause somebody to change their faith when you come at them with logic. It doesn't alter their relationship to their understanding of justice when you come at them with logic. Debate and data and arguments does not affect change in the lives of people who are trying to make meaning in their lives. What changes people is letting themselves move slowly, grounding, recognizing that they have a body, and seeing other people do the same thing, learning from the sauntering that is happening around you. When we let ourselves open up to being vulnerable and experiential in these bodies, then the relational and mystical moments and the connections with ourselves and one another and the broader world start to flourish. So I've already asked you to think about a few spiritual practices that support and reward the saunter, the labyrinth, breathing together, releasing, reminding yourself that you have a body that can go slow. And I want to introduce one more, and this one is experiential. So whoever you're sitting next to, or if you don't have somebody sitting next to you, you might move yourself around a little bit because you want to talk to somebody in just a little bit. This is a form, again, of ancient spiritual practice, Lectio Divina, that began as early as the 6th century. And it was really, a lot of spiritual practices really began and stayed in monastic spaces for a long time, and then eventually people thought, you know what, why do you have to go to a monastery to actually work on recognizing that you have something to build and grow on? So the steps of Lectio Divina kind of got stepped down, or like stuck, I guess, maybe around the 12th century, and then were reinvigorated in other times in other spaces. There are different steps, there are different lenses, I guess, but the idea is that you have a text that you hear and you listen to it 4 times. And as you experience it those 4 times, you put a different lens on and think about it. So the first time, it's just to receive it. It's just to read it. And the second time is to meditate upon it in some way, grab a phrase or a word that really calls out to you. The third time is to pray or converse with something bigger than you about it. And the 4th time is to ask what it's teaching you. I'm going to take us through this in a slightly more contemporary way. There's really older ways of doing this. So as I read this text the first time, what I would invite you to do is just sit and receive it and ask yourself, what am I experiencing through my body, my senses? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling with the words that I am hearing? If you are a person who needs to read, you will find these words at 483 in your hymnal. But I encourage you to just let the words wash over you. From Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. As we explore this passage again, I want to invite you to notice now what word or phrase from this text is really speaking to you right now. Don't try to hang on to too much at once. And sometimes I find when I'm doing this, I'll replace a word that was earlier in the piece with something that catches my attention more later on. That's okay. What word or phrase is grabbing you? When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Now I'd like to invite you to turn to the person next to you and share whatever it was that grabbed you. This is a very brief sharing. You're going to share a little more later. This next time, as I read this passage, I invite you to think about what you're feeling. What emotions are you experiencing as you hear this passage? And if there's multiple emotions, that's fine, but I encourage you to try to settle into one. I know that we carry every emotion in our bodies in some different room there, but try to focus in on one and see how that emotion is being brought to life for you with this. How are you feeling? When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Sit with that for a few moments. If it is possible for you to share with somebody who is not the person you were just talking to, that would be lovely. If it's not, that's okay as well. What emotion did this bring up for you, and how can the person that you're sharing with hold that with you? So just have a moment to discuss. I'm going to ask you to share one more time. So you might take this moment of unsettledness and move yourself now, and then you're ready to go. Just a possibility. This last time, this is a discernment time. This is when you're hearing this, what do you think this passage is inviting you to do? What is it asking you to do when you walk out the door today? What lessons are you bringing with you out of the labyrinth? When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Sit with that for a few moments, and then I will instruct again. So if I invite you into conversation one more time, what is this passage inviting you to do? Aside from find somebody new to talk to? See if you can make that happen. Move around if you are able. Stay seated if you need to. We'll come find you. Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes. Even you, even this, the holy lands on which we walk, wait patiently for your reverent movements. This holy space, these holy people, welcome all you have to give and aim to provide you with what you need to receive. May it be so.